Evening, gentlemen. Tonight we have one of the most spectacular games from Alekhine's career, and one of his big wins following the Russian Revolution. He's playing with the black pieces against Bogoljubov, one of his compatriots, and a very strong player in his own right, who were challenged for the World Championship in 1929 and 1934. Bogoljubov is actually quite famous, first for the Bogo Indian defense named after him, also known as the Bogoljubov defense, and for his pretty interesting quote where he says, "When I'm white, I win because I'm white. When I'm black, I win because I'm Bogoljubov."
This is the Nimzo-Dutch variation, which arises out of a classical Dutch. Now, Alekhine had the following to say about this. He called it a risky defense, which up to the present I have adopted only very infrequently in serious games. However, a draw would have been insufficient for him to secure first place in the tournament, so it seems he felt inclined to take some risks. And now, after the fianchetto variation chosen by white, Alekhine opts for this check, the so-called Nimzo-Dutch, trying to provoke an exchange of dark squared bishops. In modern games, a5 has been played here, notably by Ivanchuk, where at least after an exchange we will have pawn control over the preferred squares for this knight. However, Alekhine was very happy to exchange the bishops, which personally I think is a little bit suspect because we're left with a rather idiotic bishop here. However, Alekhine plans to place his pawns on dark squares and thus mitigate that. In general, he enjoyed exchanging one pair of bishops, just to get some strategical clarity. So after knight d2 and some very logical development moves, Bogoljubov opts for queen b3.
Now the seeming point of king h8 is to get out of potential problems along this diagonal. However, it's ill-timed from Alekhine, as it allows d5 from white. Better would have been to play the queen b3, e5, and then e3, and now king h8. Instead, after king h8, white can play d5, and after e takes, c takes, knight e7, black has a very uncomfortable position and white has a clear edge. That being said, after king h8, Bogoljubov also chose to screw around a little bit and went for queen c3. And only now does Alekhine go for e5, after which play continues e3, as we saw. And Alekhine chooses to expand on the queen side, a5, to prevent b4. b3 is played instead, and now queen e8.
Alekhine plays queen h5. Now Alekhine says that he has secured an attacking position, and also mentions that white cannot win a pawn like this because of this unfortunate fork, which cost him a queen. Now Bogoljubov decided to play h4, perhaps threatening to win a pawn. h4 has the disadvantage of loosening white's position a little bit too much. Alekhine immediately jumps into this hole. Of course, white has gained g5 for his own piece. Now this knight can be easily dislodged by h6 at black's convenience, but white has no easy option against this black knight. In fact, f3, which is played now, is somewhat of a mistake, and we'll be able to admire how Alekhine dismantles white's position from here. Alekhine simply mentions that b4 is probably better, and doesn't actually give a line. So we asked Leila for comment, and she says that after f4, b5. And yeah, we get one of these magnificent computer lines where everything starts hanging, but white dares not allow us to take on f2 with check. And now h6 coming into play. The intermediary e takes d6 is hilarious. And after recapturing, we see that white's position is very loose, with these weaknesses all over the place. And d6 is comparatively not so weak because white cannot attack it so easily, and has his own problems to deal with first. Nevertheless, this was a better option for white, since the chances are approximately equal, and we definitely have a complex and fascinating struggle in the works.
So after f3 and knight f6, Bogoljubov commits his second mistake, essentially extinguishing himself positionally, f4. We can see that here both Stockfish and Leela drop their evals by -2 in favor of black. A better try would have been d takes e5, after d takes e5, b4, and now f4 from white is not as scary. can see that after b5, knight e7, he takes, g4, which is hilarious, queen takes, knight d4. Here, white is worse, but his position is fairly solid, and he still has much to play for. Whereas after f4, as we shall see, his position collapses. That being said, Alekhine appears to overestimate his chances here, saying that f4 is actually forced from white in view of f5 from black. As we have seen, that is not so scary. Perhaps he thought that the queen taking the h4 pawn would lead to problems.
Now this begs e4, which Alekhine is of course delighted to play, killing 3 pieces off almost simultaneously. Now Bogoljubov, as we can see, is from this point on going to struggle to find a coherent plan, while Alekhine inexorably improves his position. First sending this wayward knight back home, and now d5. They're fixing his grasp of the center. Bogoljubov is not sure how to deal with this. Possibly it was not too late to try and make something happen on the queen side. Unfortunately, after knight e7 from Alekhine, he is successfully baited into playing a4. And now Alekhine is very happy to jump into this new weakness. Now the white position has become slightly difficult, and Bogoljubov couldn't find anything better than bishop h1, which is quite sad.
Indeed, by reneging on his queenside play, Bogoljubov has truly cancerized his position. And now Alekhine can calmly maneuver for the win. He now plays queen e8, which he writes was a very strong move, which yields black a new advantage in every case. Either control of the square queen 4 after pawn takes pawn. So that would be after c takes d5. We're now going to have control of this d5 pawn, for instance like this. Alternatively, it will give us an open file on the queen side after pawn to bishop's 5 and pawn to queen knight 4. That's going to be c5 and b5. And a third option is winning a pawn, which is what occurred in the game. Queen e8, rook g2, d takes c4, b takes c4. We can see that the a pawn is hanging, which Alekhine promptly grabs.
So Bogoljubov has decided that maintaining control of d5, or queen's 4, is crucial. So he has done so, but he has lost a pawn, and we'll see that this doesn't really alleviate his troubles. He tried to improve the position of his sideline knight, and Alekhine is now going to try expansion on the queen side. So after knight d2 we see b5. And Bogoljubov is still trying to get his pieces towards the queen side, since they were definitely far out of play. But this unfortunately allows knight d3. And as Bogoljubov likes to say, a knight on queen 6 is worse than a rusty nail in the knee. So he can't have been too pleased with this. Now at this point it was crucial that white would take on b5. Unfortunately he selected the wrong move order here, playing rook takes a5, which allows b4. And after rook takes a, Alekhine had a choice. He could of course simply recapture, and after queen c2, knight e1 would have won an exchange. However, Alekhine went for the far more flashy b takes c3 here, giving up a queen and a rook with check, but then forcing promotion, which is definitely hilarious to watch. And so after this sequence of events, Alekhine has got a queen for 2 rooks and is also a pawn down, but these 2 knights are extremely clumsy and will probably never leave white's side of the board. This bishop and rook also are not likely to take any active undertakings anytime soon. And in fact, this knight is already forced back to f1. And we now get to watch Alekhine enjoying himself, turning the screw on Bogoljubov.
Now we can see the true tour de force, which was Alekhine's queen sacrifice. White's rook over here is completely out of play, and this entire kingside structure is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. It's just got holes everywhere, just nowhere to develop. It's just terrible. Furthermore, knight e1 threatening an original checkmate here. Pretty much forces rook h2 out of white. And here, more clinical from Alekhine would have been knight to d3. And here Alekhine, taking his time, grabs the c4 pawn. That being said, more clinical would have been knight c2, with the threat of taking on e3. You can see that after bishop g2, knight takes e3, rook f7, knight takes c4, sorry. The rook pretty much has to take on d7, because otherwise the bishop's coming to b5 with some serious checkmate threats on f1. Now obviously knight takes d7, and here play could continue. Well, it's difficult to say really what the hell white can do here. As mentioned, all his pieces are practically trapped over here. So Stockfish actually suggests knight takes e4, and after f takes e4, bishop takes e4 with check, king h8. He has somewhat freed up his position and is going to have some sort of counterplay, although he is still down a rook for a queen, a rook and a pawn for a queen.
Alright. Now rook b8 is necessary because after bishop b5 the threats on f1 are critical, and white must simply remove this piece. At which point g4 is played, and Alekhine says that this is the only chance for white to prolong his resistance. But black retorts with a fresh surprise move, that being knight f3, check. Pretty much forcing out bishop f3, and after ef3, Bogoljubov will play g8 takes f5. Possibly g5 was better, since after queen e2 has played in the game, he is essentially in zugzwang with no intelligent move available.
Indeed, Bogoljubov is in a cage of his own making here and has no recourse to start sacking his pawns. He starts off with the d5 pawn. Alekhine, of course, is aware of this and starts clowning on him with king g8, h5, king h7, e4, sacking more pawns. After knight takes, queen takes, d6 takes, f6 takes, and rook d2. We can see that Bogoljubov is truly running out of ideas.
Now, it was quite possible to simply play queen f4 here. However, after lengthy deliberation, Stockfish agrees with Alekhine's move, which was queen e2, essentially forcing simplifications and accelerating the victory. So after this sequence of events, black enters a king and pawn ending, which is easily winning thanks to this d pawn, which can serve as a distraction. And we see that after d5, the white king is pushed off from control of f5, and black will win this f4 pawn and then plant his king on g3 and push this one home. So Bogoljubov decided he'd had enough and sacked it off here.
Yep, so ultimately neither queen sacrifices from Alekhine were actually necessary. That being said, both were the best move insofar as they quickened the victory. This last one with queen e2 actually shortens the victory by some at least 5 moves according to Stockfish. And more importantly to someone in Alekhine's position, it forces quick simplification, leaving Bogoljubov no choice other than to resign. Whereas after taking on f4, Bogoljubov might try and play on for various tricks in the hopes of somehow sleazing a win. So all in all, this has been a pretty fantastic game from Alekhine, and one of his most notable games, which he of course recorded in his book, My Notable Games from this period.